the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Don't underestimate
the power of a single it could change your whole life.
INCradio Chatline.
conversations that matter.
This is what I ask. Let me always dwell in the temple of the Lord till I This is what I ask. Let me always dwell in the temple of the Lord till I This is what I ask. Let me always dwell in the temple of the Lord till I
Hello. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to our live broadcast here, only here on Chatline. My name is Melvi Tamayo from Visalia, California, and I am so thrilled to be here. Not only am I hosting for the very first time, but we have a complete fun panel for you guys, which are my friends here on Chatline, to be sharing with you a very interesting yet somewhat of a dot. We'll go ahead and dive into that in a few minutes. All right. But anyway, before we go into our topic, let me go ahead and have some of my friends here introduce themselves. Whoever will go first. Since they don't want to, Tony, go first.
Everyone, I was about to go. I wasn't sure. Tony Rose, Valenzuela Broadcasting from. Am I? No, I'm not in Sterling Heights today. I'm in Troy, Michigan. I had to think about that for a second. Yeah, Troy, Michigan. Not too far from Sterling Heights, but yeah, we're from Troy, the hand state. I don't know how to do the shapes of the other states in the broadcast, but I can at least do mine.
Good one. Next up, we have. He's always on the chat every day with me, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Nate, hello. How are you doing over there in the
I switched
part of
teams.
your woods?
I got promoted, right?
So excited for you to be here.
But yes,
no
I'm
idea.
Nathan Russell. Nathan Russell from Fort Worth. I'm happy to be here. My first time here on Chatline.
Awesome.
Usually I'm on INCradio South Central States. I'm here in the studio, but glad to be on today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Last but not least, Miss Arnie.
Hello, I'm Arnie. I am here in North Fort Worth. Normally, I'm there with Nate at the studio, but today we're in separate places.
Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Now I know you're also excited, like me, about this topic. And of course, in life, as humans, we interact with each other on a daily basis. And when it comes to our thoughts, our actions, of course, it is indeed, or we impact others with how we say things, how we act, and interact amongst each other. So today, our topic is all about mindful criticisms. You might be wondering, what is that? And sometimes the emotions get the best of us, right? We have our own personal triggers in different circumstances or predicaments in every situation we go through on a daily basis. But specifically today, we're gearing towards more on either what has shamed us in the past or maybe at present, or if others are doing this negative action to us, and how do we react towards that situation. Now, to the panel, my group of friends over here right now, my question to you is dun, 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 dun. Have you ever experienced shame in your lives? And if so, if it's not too much to ask, you can go ahead and share your own personal experiences. And how did you feel about it?
I'll go
Anyone?
ahead and start. Yeah, I'll start. I mean, what immediately comes to mind is my experience in like middle school and high school. So like I grew up uh, in Florida, but before that I was in Hawaii. And Hawaii is like it's kind of like how you imagine. It's a very happy-go-lucky place. Everyone kind of gets along. And then I go to Florida and it's like different. It's not like that at all. And so like I experienced like bullying in elementary school, middle school because of my weight. Because in Hawaii you eat a whole bunch and nobody really cares, and the food's real good, and you have that laid back lifestyle, but not so much in Florida. So I did get bullied a lot for that. I know that like I kind of grew out of it later on in high school, but yeah, that kind of really set my foundations in life is having to go through that for so many years. And I mean, even though it was bad and it had very negative self-image of myself, it did toughen me up, and it got to where like it things like that just don't bothers me as much, and I have a lot thicker skin for that. So I don't know if anyone else has anything they'd like to share.
Yeah, before I pass it on to one of them, I can definitely relate with you, Nate, because I grew up or also came from an island in Guam or from Guam. I came from Guam
Really,
and
I was
moving,
born in
yes.
Guam.
And so, Diego or Diego, I can't pronounce it anymore. But anyway, in Guam, moving from Guam, from island life, like what you said, lots of food, laid back life, and then coming to California. Of course, even the way we present ourselves, our mannerisms, or even the way we speak, for example, people pick up on it. So they'll be like, "Hey, where you from?" Or just directly, "You're not from here," right? Because we can tell with the way you look, the way you act, the way you speak, and yeah, and the list goes on. So of course, when I rebuttal, most of the time I prefer to just be silent about it, and my response would be, "Was that really meant for you to hurt me, or are you calling me out, or did you just say it for the sake of saying?" And then so when I throw it back at them, then they stop, because I'm no longer afraid to call them out on it, because one, it's not welcoming, right? And I feel kind of offended by their tone, the way they say it. But at the same time, I can only control how I would feel about it. I can't control how they would react towards what I'm going to say next. But like you, I'm now, I also have thicker skin at present, because I've learned from, the people that did that to me. I can call it many things, but on a personal note, I would just most of the time ignore, just like on, let's say, if they do something on social media or say something to me on social media, it's ignore, delete, and block.
Yeah.
Because we don't need that in our lives.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah. How about anyone
When you
else?
sign up to get thicker skin? I think I've gotten thicker skin. What
But
about you, Arnie?
sometimes we get it. And I think what's harder is when it actually comes from people like you're close to or your family. In our family, we have what we call the Ligaya curse. So Ligaya is my grandma's last name. And all my aunts just somehow were very, very skinny when they were younger. But once they got married, they got bigger. And so in our family, whenever they notice like you're a female and you're bigger, they always call it the Ligaya curse. And so sometimes when your siblings are skinnier than you, and they're always like, every time you see them, they're like, oh, you kind of gain weight there a little bit, right? And so I don't know if they're doing that to kind of maybe motivate you to not be as big and start to lose weight, or if they're just doing that because they're just trying to make themselves feel better about their life. You know what I mean? And so I think it's when other people say stuff to me, I really don't care. It doesn't bother me, it doesn't get to me. But I think it's different when it's people who um, you're close to, because other people, we don't have to see them if we don't want to, but when it comes to your family, you're always going to see them on a regular basis, whether when you visit for family events or just anything. That's someone you're always going to see on a regular basis. So I think that's what makes it a little bit harder when it comes from them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Very, very, very relatable. Especially, I think most of the time, sometimes we can't help it, but in our culture, they have these expectations and they tend to compare things, not only our physical attributes, but also just the way we are, period. So, it is, and it does hurt. I can totally relate to that because I too have experienced that in the past. Like, why are you not like, your sisters like this, or why are you not? I said, this is me. This is who I am, and I embrace
Uh,
it.
every time they ask me that, they're like, why aren't you anything like your sister? I'm like, first of all, are they even happy? Okay, they're not happy in their life either, so I'm good with mine because I'm free to do what I want, go wherever I want. I don't got to answer to nobody. So sometimes, like you said, throw it back at them when they try to compare you to somebody else, and I'm like, yeah, no, my life is great, so why would I want to be like them?
Oh yeah, when you take away the fun or gratification, it does make a huge difference. Let me tell you that. How about you, Tony or EJ? Any more input? How about you guys? Did you experience any sort of maybe similar situations like we've had?
I feel like mine, I do resonate with the physical side, but also just in general for like your tastes in different things, like whether it's like your taste in music or the things that like your hobbies that you're into. I feel like growing up, I didn't, I couldn't relate to a lot of my peers in that way, where they would kind of make or shame me or make fun of me for liking certain things like older music, and they're like, why do you listen to that? Like, they would just ask questions, like sometimes just that simple question of like, why do you do that, and as opposed to being like curious. So I feel like that's like another facet to it, whereas kind of growing up I got self-conscious about even just like things that I like, oh, is it okay is it weird that I like this, like, is it weird that I like this kind of music, or that I like this kind of hobby, just because people my age were just not into that. It's like, as I got older, I learned to try to own it a little bit more. But it was a lot harder because when you feel like you can't relate to someone else, you're kind of like, oh, you feel like a little bit of a loner.
You know
So
what's funny about that though? I had the same experience when I was a kid when it came to like the music that I like, old music. And then I find that now that I'm a lot older, a lot of those people who are around my age are into that music now. And it's like, okay, okay, you made fun of me back then
okay,
for listening to that. Now you're listening to it now. What does that say?
thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
no, exactly, right? Yeah. Yes, go
And
ahead.
to go along with that, like sometimes when I was in school, there wasn't a lot of Asians in my school because at the time there weren't a lot of Asians in California. And so when people would make fun of me like, oh, you're a nerd, because I had like all honor classes and everything, I didn't take offense to that, because for me, who cares? Yeah, I know I'm smart. Who wants to be not smart? And when people would make fun of me, I had jocks who came up to me and they would sit by me because they're like, hey, can you help us with our homework, or can you help us with our test? And I'm like, yeah,
Hey.
go ahead. Start making fun of me now, all you other people, because now all the football players, basketball players, they're all my friends. So, they meant to make it as a negative, but I spun it in a way like, yes, I'm smart. And guess what? I'm going to let everyone know. And if they need help, I will help them. So now I got the football players as my friends.
Yeah, there are advantages to that too. EJ, how about you?
Yeah, I'm
Oh.
sure he's commenting away there in the
Okay,
chat.
while we're waiting, while we're waiting for him to come back, he's still probably thinking of his answer. I'm just kidding. So, in now that we've all had our share, or we've shared our own personal experiences when it comes to shaming, or being shamed at, what do you think made you stronger with that experience, or what was it that you basically embodied as you do your best to progress in life? I know that most of us probably experienced it when we were younger, and maybe even every now and then. As a matter of fact, I actually experienced one not too long ago, because I'm now, I mean, I don't know, I think I've mentioned this before. I'm actually the only Filipino at the place where I work, out of hundreds of employees that work there. So you can only imagine how different I am compared to everyone else. But because of how I speak, my mannerisms, the way I present myself, they sort of link me to like almost another kind of culture and not Filipino. So sometimes they'll ask me if I'm half white or half Filipino. And I'll tell them, no, I'm actually pure Filipino. And then they'll say something like, well, how come some other Filipinos are like this, but you're not? And I would just tell them, well, we're all different depending on where we grew up, or where we learn things, or where we're at. And like myself, I've lived in the Philippines when I was young. I was born there, but I left when I was in 5th grade. But still, English is my third language. I learned it. I was able to speak the way I do because I chose to learn it. Because in the past, when we actually first moved to Saipan before going to Guam, I was in grade school and I was made fun of because I didn't know how to speak English very well. And they all did, because a lot of our teachers back then in the school that my parents enrolled us, were a lot of them were either white or African American, and they're very fluent in English. So of course I stood out among the rest when I was just barely learning how to speak the way they do. Instead of asking me, or just being patient with me, they were just teasing me and picking on me and say, you'll never learn, just stop talking, you sound really awful. So when they did that, or when I experienced that, I just stopped talking overall, and I would write my answers on a piece of paper, because I told myself, or I even told, I think, one of them who didn't want to stop picking on me, I said, one day, mark my word, I will speak better than any of you in here. I gave myself 3 months, and my mom thought I was crazy talking to myself in my room by myself, talking to myself every time she passes by. She would check up on me, and I would constantly read out loud. And I told myself, Melvi, you got this. You got this. Prove them all wrong. And I certainly did. And guess what? Like Arnie, they ended up to be my friends towards the end. They gave in and said, you know what? We apologize for what we did. You called us out. You proved us wrong. Now, and at that moment, I told myself, I will never, ever let anyone step all over me ever again. Instead, if it's not worth my time and they're not willing to change their behavior, I will limit myself with my interactions with them, and just walk away and move on with what I need to do with my life. That's what I learned from that experience. How about you guys? Do you have any input, or what have you learned so far with those experiences in the past?
Actually, I have a similar experience to you where I made friends with someone that bullied me. So in middle school, probably the biggest person to tease me in like 7th grade. He was just always making fun of me, always pointing things out about me, and I was just like, man, what's wrong with this guy? And in high school, he realized like my nature, that like, okay, I don't really care. I'm still a kid. I'm having fun, and he finally like gave in, and we actually became like the best of friends. We had a band together. We were always hanging out. I still keep in touch with them to this day.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, sometimes it's just like you just stand up for yourself, but at the same time, like they may actually come around and be your friends. Also, you have to be open to that. I know sometimes not all, bully situations end that way, but sometimes you could change somebody's mind also.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anything more to say, Tony, Arnie?
Mine was more of like learning Tagalog. This is like I know earlier I spoke more on in terms of stuff that I liked, but I feel like there was a point in my life where it was just always pointed out that like, oh yeah, she doesn't know Tagalog. Oh, she doesn't know like Filipino. And that made me really self-conscious a lot of the time because it was in environments where, like they would be talking and I would have no idea. And, like most of the people in the room would be talking and they're just like, oh yeah, she doesn't know Tagalog. I'm like, okay. And then later on, it was out of motivation for wanting to learn, kind of like in yours, but just like the reverse a little bit because, I didn't want them to think that I didn't want to put in the effort. I guess so. That was one of my motivations, along with the fact that like at that time, one of my close friends now, who came from the Philippines, like moved to our area, and I wanted to learn so that I could communicate better with her because knowing like what that felt like, that idea of not knowing the language and then really struggling and then not having that support system to kind of encourage you to do it. Like I tried to like push myself to really do it. So it became a big drive. I feel like that stuff sometimes becomes like big motivation for some reason. Not in the sense of just like proving them wrong, but like even just showing yourself like you can do something, out of that, right? Like and channeling that energy into something more positive and being able to say like, yeah, you were able to get something out of it. So and the music stuff, they never changed for me, Nate. Like I feel like I still have different music tastes from everybody, but that's
You know,
okay. That's all right.
Tony, funny how you said that. They will, so they'll tell us, how come you don't know Tagalog? You don't learn Tagalog. And then you learn Tagalog and then you speak English. How come you don't learn English? Well, which one is it? Which one do you want me to learn? I mean, English, Tagalog. I mean, now that I know both, and then now you're speaking in another dialect. It's like I don't know. Sometimes they're never content, and I've also been called like the oddball in the family. Sometimes my parents have to tell me, "Can you please slow down because you're talking too fast when you're talking to us in English." But I said, I talk this way. Yeah, but you don't want to be the one looking like an oddball in the family because you're talking like a, I don't know if I want to say it. They'll tell me I'm talking like not the Filipino talk, but the other talk. I can't say it. Like okay, I'm just gonna say like a white girl. There you go. Yeah, they tell me I talk like a white girl. I said I don't understand. Why would you say that? This is how you should speak in English, right? So I'm now doubting my own self. I said I've gotten this far. I learned how to speak the way I do. Now I'm getting criticized by it. I'm confused. How about you, Arnie? Any thoughts on that? Because I you speak English very well.
Why, thank you. And they do say that too. And I said, why, thank you? Because, I am in America. I am American. They asked me, are you Filipino? I'm like, no, I'm an American. I was born and raised here. And I leave it at that. But like what you were saying, where people are never happy, it's so true because, when you're skinny, they say, you're so skinny, you should eat. And then when you gain weight because you ate, they're like, what happened? How did you get so big? And I'm like, because you fed me. Right. And so it's like they're not going to be happy whether you're skinny, like I said, or you're bigger. They're always going to say something. And so I think at a young age I started to realize that. And so I just started to realize where, what, people could say whatever they want. I really don't care, because as long as I'm happy and I'm okay, then I don't let them affect that. And so, like, even to this day, when I go home to visit, which usually I don't go home as often as anymore as I used to, because every time I go home, they're like, dude, you gained weight again. And I'm like, okay, but hey, I enjoy having my desserts. I enjoy having my chocolate, right? And I said, plus, when we're all going to die eventually, so it doesn't really matter if you're skinny or big, you're still going to die. So might as well enjoy, life and enjoy the things that you enjoy. And so, because of that, sometimes, like I won't go home and visit as much. But like I said, it's only because these are the people I'm going to see all the time. But anyone outside my family, when they say stuff, like I really don't let it get to me. I don't care because one, they don't pay my bills, they don't feed me. And so why should I care what they think about me when I'm okay with who I am? So yeah.
Thanks
Yeah,
for that reminder.
Yeah, thank you.
there's
Thank
that
you for
part too where they'll prepare a lot of really unhealthy food and then they'll get upset that you don't eat it when they just made fun of you for being, larger just a few months ago. It's like, no, I'm not eating that. Sorry.
Yeah. Or when you go to parties, they make you eat all this stuff when they just said, oh, you gained weight. I'm like, oh, but you're trying to feed me now.
Yeah. So those circumstances or those experiences you've had or we've had with these individuals or people or even the people that we care about, how has your relationship from that period of time up to now, has that changed at all? I know, Arnie, you just mentioned that you barely visit Philippines now because of that. But
Well,
I'm sure you,
I don't think it's
yeah,
changed. I think I've learned to accept the fact that sometimes I think people like to say negative things about others to make themselves feel better about themselves sometimes. And so, as long as I'm happy and as long as I'm okay, I just say, you know what? Maybe they're making fun of me that I'm bigger because, they've got nothing else to focus their life on. Maybe their life is so boring that they got to go picking on me. You know what I mean? And so I get to the point where I accept the fact that, I think I'm the nicest one of all my sisters and they're mean, right? That's what I say. And I'm like, and let them be mean. I'm still going to be nice, but I'm not going to let what they say get to me.
which is great. We shouldn't. As a matter of fact, when I'm listening to each one of you share or say your own personal experiences, I'm visualizing myself outside of that perspective or that moment. And I tell myself, let's say Nate, Arnie, you're there, or Tony, and these individuals are criticizing you in a negative way, and I'm an outsider. Now, coming from my own perspective, of course, let's say I don't know all of you, right? But think of it this way. If the individuals who are having that conversation are now heard also by others outside of their environment and they don't know the people criticizing, what makes you think that they're not also now going to judge you based off on what you said? So we're reminding each of us to reflect on that thought. Imagine, right? So if you want to be thought of as a kind person, then kind words should come out of our mouths. But if you say negative things to people, especially the ones that you care about, but everyone else, let's say everyone else don't know you, but you're the one saying those mean things towards that friend, that loved one. So, of course, the outside individuals will now put the judgment on that person who's saying the negative things. I don't know if I'm kind of making sense right now, but it, imagine that, right? Human interactions on a daily basis is through communication. So, when we're interacting, we're communicating. This is why we called it mindful criticisms, because there are times we will end up venting on someone. I've lashed out before on someone that I did not mean to because I was having a bad day. You're right, Arnie. I was just having a bad day. She said something negative, and I lashed out on that person, and I apologized quickly because I didn't mean to say something without thinking. So, in other words, we're reminding ourselves, or I'm even reminding myself, and we're reminding now each one of you to be mindful of what you say before you say them, because you don't know what kind of impact what you're saying to another person. Because what if the person is not strong enough to handle the words that you said, right? What if
Yeah,
it hurts
that's
so
so
bad
true.
that, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
So,
think people don't realize that like for me, I think I'm a strong person. And so if people say things to me, I try not to let it affect me. But I can see how other people react when people shame them. And I think people don't realize that not everybody's strong. Sometimes you may even say it as a joke, and they really don't take it as a joke. And so, just like, let's say, even in my family, when we do have people who are saying that to others, like, "Oh, you've been gaining weight," and all that stuff. And I'm like, hey, but they're okay because they're happy and they can eat whatever they want. So then it's kind of, I try to defend the person that's getting shamed to let them know that, hey, it's not okay, you know? Like, you could say that to me all you want, but don't say it to others also who may not be strong enough to take it. And so I think even if we're just a bystander and we hear those things, that's something I feel like I need to stand up for that person, especially if they're not the type that could stand up for themselves, you know?
And from my perspective, like, who's giving me this criticism? Like, do they even command my respect in any way? Right. So if it's just some random person who's going to make a comment and be like, I don't know who you are, so I don't care what you have to say. But it really does depend, because if I feel like, and I kind of see people as, there's people who just spectate, they just comment, they just criticize. And then there's those who actually do something. You think about a sport, there's people in the stands. Sometimes they get rowdy, they yell all sorts of things. And you got the players on the court actually doing things, right? Well, I have a
Right.
lot more respect for people who do things. And if you're someone who you just make comments, you don't contribute anything, you just like to criticize, you just like to point things out, then I really don't hold their criticism with a whole lot of weight.
Absolutely. Because, if you think about it, even let's say you do good deeds, your actions cannot define who you are if if the words that come out of your mouth are completely opposite of what you're doing, right? So you have to intermingle those two together. They have to be a pair. What you say and how you act should come hand in hand, or should go hand in hand. That way, when you're presenting yourself to others, then you're presenting yourself as who you really want to be as a person to other people. So, with that in mind, how did you guys first react when you first experienced getting shamed? Did you retaliate right away? Did you sort of pause? Did you, I don't know, maybe made a rash or unthoughtful comments towards those who did the wrong remarks against you? Or I'm just wondering, how did you react when you first
I shut
experienced it?
shut
So,
down.
like for me, when I was younger, um, I think I was very vengeful. So I was the type where, um, you know, everybody liked me because I was the nice person. But if you cross me, I don't let you get away with it, kind of a thing, you know? And so, no, because like I said, when I was in high school, I was probably like the smallest person there. And so I can't let them get to me. And so if they did things to me that I did not like, then I would call on my football friends or my basketball friends and says, "Hey, can you walk down the hall with me cuz this person's being mean?" To the point where, I wouldn't have to do anything, but I got my friends and my schoolmates to, I mean, they wouldn't do anything violent or anything like that, but just to the point where,
Bodyguard.
like, leave her alone or you're going to
Send
get
a
it, kind of.
message.
Exactly. Without anything. Um, but that's just how I was before. And even, when people would hurt me or do things to me, I went and, I didn't do anything illegal, but I didn't make their life pleasant. Hey, they were mean to me. But now, like Nate said, I get to the point where, hey, you really don't have any impact in my life. So I don't care. You can say whatever you want. I'm not going to do anything about it. But I think with those who are younger, you know, I don't want to say revenge, but I think the way they stand up for themselves is to um, maybe do things, but not revenge. Nate, what did you
I don't-
do?
I think Tony should go. She's been trying to say something.
No, I just shut down. That's all I do. I don't know if that's true for the other generations, but I feel like when stuff like that happens, I just kind of like nothing comes out. Even if I want to say something, I feel like I just freeze. I don't know what that comes from, but yeah.
And you
Okay.
know, when I was younger, that's how I was. I really was. But then after a while, I had to, you have to learn to defend yourself. You have to learn to stand up for yourself because until you do, people will keep doing things to you because they know they can. But once you stand up to them and say, yeah, say whatever you want, I really don't care, then it's no longer fun anymore. They're going to stop. Just like we tell kids, when a kid makes fun of you and you cry and go tell mommy, the more they're going to do it because they see how it affects you. But if you're the type where they make fun of you and all of a sudden you say, oh, I don't care, then what's the fun in that? Because now they don't get a reaction out of you.
It feels like communicating boundaries almost in that way, right, Arnie? Like, it's the same
Mhm,
with like letting my friends know. Like, was it you who gave that example of like a joke earlier? Like, even with joking,
mhm.
sometimes I'll let them know on the side, like, hey, I wasn't okay with that joke, blah blah. So it's kind of like it's advocating for yourself in that way, like in all the situations. Like, there's some people that it's worth advocating for, right? Like maybe it's your family, your close friends, but then like you said, if it's just like a stranger, you just something happened, like maybe you like traffic, like they just got upset at you, I don't know, but
Mhm.
one of those things, so
Yeah,
yeah.
I just
I have a
that's not
story.
funny.
I have a
I
story
just don't
about
listen to you. Go ahead, Nate.
I have a
Sorry.
story about bombing a talent show in high school. It's bad, but it's also funny, but it's in line with the topic. So there was a school talent show, and me and my band, we signed up. So me, I play guitar. We had a singer, bassist, drums, full band. Okay. And on the day of the rehearsal, none of my bandmates could make it. It was just me. So I had to be up on stage. And I'm the type of person who's not really afraid of like, standing in front of a crowd. I'm not really, that shy. I probably should be. Probably should be more shy, but I'm not. But I performed this song, and I'm not really a singer. I could barely play and sing, and I completely bombed it. And I was like, okay, well, it's just me. We're just doing rehearsals, but on the talent show, my band is going to come through, and we're going to be awesome. They couldn't go to the talent show either, so I was the only one at the talent show. They never showed up, and I had to do it again. And one of my friends was recording, and the whole time my friends were laughing at it, and they were like, "This person stinks," and blah 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 blah. And I had to hear that because they showed it to me, and I was like, "Oh man!" But at the same time, like it didn't really affect me as much. Like it did hurt a little bit, but at the same time, I was like, "Well, I was the only one that showed up." Okay, so I have a full band. They didn't bother to show up, but I did. So I didn't really let it get to me that much because in the end, I'm like, I was the one who's brave enough to stand in front of people, and who cares what the crowd thinks. So I don't think I ever got redemption though when it came to playing the band. I played in a few bands here and there, but yeah, that was one criticism that I got to experience that wasn't 100% pleasant to go through.
Oh, I can relate again with you because I same here. They left me. We were supposed to sing as a group, and I was the only one who showed up. And out of my nervousness, I forgot the lyrics. So I had to tell to tell them to replay the song. And I still forgot it. And just like Tony, I shut down and cried. And after that moment, I couldn't show my face for a while, but one of the counselors spoke to me and she said, I know you have a talent and then I know that you tried your best. Is there any way we can give you another chance at it and just do what you need to do with or without your group? I don't know what it is, but I guess she saw something in me that I maybe like Nate, she wanted me to redeem myself or something in front of people, and I was like, okay, fine, then I'll do it. And the minute I did it the second time around, boy, am I glad I did, because I definitely did redeem myself after that. And the ones that made fun of me once again ended up to be my friends. So, things happen for a reason. Sometimes in different situations that we face in our lives, we learn from each one of them, good or bad, painful or not. But it's also nice when others are there to help us or defend us in a way. So, with all of our circumstances, with all the shared experiences that you've shared with us so far during this broadcast or this episode, what or have you ever shared it with anyone else when you first experienced it in your lives? Did you have a confidant or a friend or maybe a relative that you talked to? For me, I couldn't say it. Just like Tony, again, I shut down. I just did my best to solve the problems on my own. I didn't want to bother my parents about it or my siblings. I don't know why. I have trouble asking for help, even up to this point in time in my life, unfortunately. So I'm still learning every single day when it comes to that. But that, and of course, the power of prayer, right? So yeah, I dealt with it on my own. I learned from others. I've also asked others for help and advice on just how to deal with difficult people sometimes. But I could never, for some reason, I could never open it up to my family members of what I've gone through. And honestly, until now, they don't know. They don't know, but now the show, they watch this show, then they'll know.
I have to agree with what you say because I think when things like that happen, and I think the reason I never shared anything was because I didn't want anyone to see that I was weak. And, I was the one who came to defend people when people would make fun of them. I was the one who would help people when they needed help. And when they would ask for help, and I could see how vulnerable they were and how they were not as strong, I guess I didn't want anyone to see me that way. And so I felt like I can help anybody, I can do things for anybody, but I would never tell anybody or I would never ask anybody for help because they see me as a stronger person. And if I were to share things, then they may see like, oh, she's not as strong as we thought she was. And I guess that's not the type of person I want them to see. So that's why I would never do it. But
And I very much keep things to myself also, like you, Melvi. And I remember I had a friend in college who was a very serious person, and they straight up like criticized me that like, do you joke around a lot as like a coping mechanism? I was like, huh? That kind of like took me off guard. But then I thought about it and I'm like, well, yeah, because the way I see it, like I'm in control of my life. I'm in control of my own happiness. So yeah, there's a lot of bad things that happen in my life, but I don't want to be defined by the negative things that happen in my life. I'm not letting that control me at all. And I see that in, a lot of people, like really traumatic things that happen can define them. And it's unfortunate when you see someone in that situation they can't get out of. And I used to be a teacher, and I used to advise that to students, like, hey, you're in control of your emotions. If you're gonna let other people upset you, if you're gonna let them, uh, rile you up, so to speak, and get you into trouble, like you're letting them control you. You need to be in control of your own life. And so that's kind of like the lesson that I learned as I was growing up, coming out of high school and through college, that yeah, I'm in control of my life. I'm not going to be defined by anybody else other than myself.
I
I
feel like for me,
definitely.
see,
I've
and
always had different like. Oh, sorry,
wait, just
Artie, go.
to go off of what Nathan was saying, that is so true because when people are so sad because of how people are shaming them, I tell them, I'm like, hey, why do you really care what they say? They're not the ones taking care of you. They're not the ones doing anything for you because we have to encourage them because I have seen it where people did things that you would never imagine they would do because they were so affected by the negativity. And that's something that I wouldn't want to see with any of my friends or with people I know. And so anytime they bring it up or I see it, I let them know. I'm like, you know what? Who cares? Don't let them get to you because guess what? One, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just saying stuff to get a reaction. And two, what they say shouldn't matter to you because they're not important in your life. But just being able to let them see that I think is really important because I have had friends who did the unthinkable because of them getting shamed. So
I feel like I I don't know if it's like with the age differences and everything. Like I'm super glad you guys like were able to get toughened up through your experiences. I feel like I've just gotten softer and softer. And like my I all of my older friends, or who I would call my aunts, they sound exactly like how all of you are reassuring me throughout this discussion. It's just like they always say that, just like, well, why do you care? Like, why do you care what they think? They don't know your life. They don't know the things that you're going through. And I feel like that's been the reminder that I try to hold on to. Like all of us kind of interact with each other, on a daily basis. And it can be really easy to just pass off these like comments and everything, right? Because we don't know the story. We're only seeing like, a second of someone's story, whether it's an observation about them, whether it's, something that they do funny with their laugh, or something that they do. And it's really easy to comment on that without knowing the backstory of all of that. So it's it's something that I've tried to remind like myself, because I feel like there's also mindful criticism towards yourself, right? And it made me think of that, what Arnie was saying, because those criticisms sometimes that come from different places, you can start to internalize that. And it's good if you're able to kind of have that self-awareness, um to be firm, or to kind of like define for you, like, who are you, like these may be attributes about yourself that, yeah, maybe it could be true, but is that all you are, right? Like, is that something that is permanent? Does it have to stay that way? No, not necessarily. Like, because the things that they comment sometimes may be stuff that we don't like about ourselves, right? And I found that true for me. Like, maybe there's things that the reason why it's painful maybe is because it's something that I actually don't like. But that doesn't mean that that's like, don't put a period on the end of it, right? Like, that's not the final thing. So that's what I've been trying to remind myself to kind of cope with these things, because I don't think I've gotten tougher. I think I'm just soft. I still shut down, and I'm still soft. But we're working on it. So yeah.
I'll keep
And
working on it, Tony. We got you.
and you'll get there. Really, you will. Because honestly, if you guys would have met me a few years ago, I'm like total night and day. I was a type where you make fun of me, I would just like go in my room, do things. But now, who cares? So you will get there, and it just takes, I don't know, something in your life to click, to realize, you know what? I don't care. But
You'd be surprised that we're thinking and we're just taking so much time and effort to think what they're thinking, but really, when they criticize, they don't even really care about us. They just say it for the sake of saying most of the time. And so when you're letting them affect your own life, your own perception of things, and your own belief, or even your own confidence, then you end up giving them the winning, what is it called? The winning attitude. So let's just be mindful that when it comes to others, like what you said, Tony, earlier, definitely agree. They only know minor details. They don't really know the whole story. Sometimes we're criticized by the little things in life, like our physical attributes, features, or our weight, for example, or the look of your hair, or just every little thing, but not the overall factor, because they're just basing off on the one thing they don't like about us. If that makes sense. But yes, they're judging because they don't like something about us. But once they get to know us, though, it's a different story. Then the table turns, say, oh, okay, now that I'm getting to know this person, now it makes more sense. So sometimes it's just the opportunity of having an open mind and knowing what you value in life are what matters most. Because again, not everybody's strong, some are weak. So when we're not careful of what we say, then of course it bounces back to us on really what kind of a person we are, what kind of a person we're becoming when we're reckless with our words. And yet, when you think about kindness, there's no value to that. If anything, it's of great value when you spread kindness. That's how you end up, connecting, making more connections. We're bridging the gaps. We're connecting the dots instead of, breaking or have this mentality of, nah, I don't think I like her because she looks like this, or I don't like him because he's giving me some off vibe, without even having a conversation with that person, or not even have a chance to get to know the person. So, with that in mind, is there anything else you would like to add in terms of, let's say, what's the most important lessons you've learned experiencing this in your lives?
So, just to add to what you said, this is why when people are saying things negative to other people, the reason I say stuff is because I want them to know it's not okay. For them, maybe it's okay to make fun of people, and until someone calls them out on it, they're going to keep doing it. But I think once someone calls them out on it, then hopefully they'll realize, okay, maybe I shouldn't do it. I mean, for the most part, if they're really mean, they're just going to be mean no matter what. But you never know. You could be the one that gets to them to make them change and not be so mean.
And for me, one thing that I learned was that unfortunately there are just people who, their whole thing in life, what gives them joy is bringing other people down. That's just the reality of it. And for me, I tend to filter down my friend groups to, just those friends that were, I can be positive. We don't talk about others. We don't try to bring others down. If I talk to somebody who I think might be my friend, but I start to get that vibe like, all right, you're talking bad about somebody now. I have a feeling I'm going to be on the wrong end of that in the future if this is how you speak about people. And so that's just the one thing that I learned was that I don't have to be friends with everybody. I don't have to have everybody's stamp of approval. For those people that matter the most to me, those are the ones that I actually seek, any kind of validation from or respect.
Yeah. So for me, what I learned is like one, I really don't care what people say or do. Um, but I get on a plane and I go places that makes me feel better. And then I think to myself, see, I can go anywhere I want. You're stuck home wherever you're at being miserable. That's how I see it.
Tony, do you have something to say?
There's too many things. My brain is absorbing like so much from this conversation. But it just goes back to because honestly, I feel like we didn't even touch on all the different ways that this kind of thing manifests, right? Like there's so many things that you can pick out about a person, and like I feel like even just questioning sometimes, like, oh, like why is it like that? Like maybe they don't mean it in like in that intention, but it can make someone feel like ashamed, right? Even just by commenting on it a certain way. So if you have some kind of goal, I guess like when you're trying to talk to a person, if you have some kind of intention, like make that known. Make that known like when you're talking to people, because maybe you aren't equipped with the right words yet. Maybe you just don't know how to tell them the right way, but make your intentions known. If like let's say with us, Melvi, like I make a comment to you and you don't take it the right way, I think it's what's one thing that I always try to do is, I don't want to say like over explain myself, but I want to communicate effectively, like what my actual intent was, and of course apologize if the intent was missed. Like, oh, that hit the wall. That was not how I received it. I'm like, okay, I'm totally sorry. Because a lot of things can be fixed with a conversation or series, not a single conversation, but series of conversations, and it's only the way. That's the only way that we can really learn to kind of fix things and unlearn these different things that maybe people have just gotten used to because that's how they grew up, or that's the environment that they were in. It could be like their family, or and we don't always know that all the time. So just being able to try to have that patience and benefit of the doubt, and not internalizing it, like what Arnie and Nate have said. Like it's one thing to recognize it, but it's another thing to actually let it get to you. And I think once you actually let it get to you, that's what could lead to doing things that you might regret too. So, instead of the retaliation, instead of, finding a way to to see, like, what you could do to get back, like, be intentional about who you want to be out of that situation. Like, they don't, whatever label that they're trying to put on you, that's not who you have to be. And that goes for especially things that are important to you. Like, if you have core things that are important to you that conflict with other people's views, it's like, why would you let their judgments be a reason for you to not believe in what you believe, right? So you always have to hold on to that. You always have to fight for that, because at the end of the day, it's going to be, between you and the big guy. So
Yeah. And also I always like let people know, don't stoop to their level. You don't like what they say, you don't like what they're doing. Don't because when you internalize it sometimes then you may in turn say something you are going to regret eventually. And so that's one thing I always say is, you know what, I'm not going to stoop to their level. If they want to keep saying stuff like that about me, go ahead, I don't care, because I'm just going to live my life. You have no bearing in my life. And so just to keep us from doing anything regrettable, whether, saying stuff back to them and also being that mean person. I always, that's why it's important not to internalize things too much.
Yep, not internalizing. Know your intent. Intent is a big thing because sometimes when we listen to the words, we don't even try to understand, or vice versa. When somebody's being mean, they think it's okay, but then they're on the receiving end, it's not. So it's also being self aware. And when you're trying to also increase your emotional fluency on things, or they call it now emotional intelligence, you're recognizing the good and the bad, and you're distilling now in your head, what are these words that I'm trying to relay and what is my intent? So when you're throwing words at somebody, which is again, the word for today is mindful. Be mindful of what you say because you'll never know how it impacts others. And, we have that saying, do unto others what you want others to do unto you, right? And I think all of us in this world would love to have a place we can call it home, a safe place to just be ourselves and be able to also express ourselves without being judged the first time we even open our mouth, for example, or we exist in a certain area without being looked down upon, but instead we welcome everyone else with open arms. By even just a little act of kindness goes a long way. So I know we're coming to a close here, but before I let my friends go, I'm giving them an opportunity to also have their words of goodbyes or words of encouragement or anything they would like to say, maybe even greetings to all of our listeners and viewers out there. And for those of you who posted your comments as well and for sharing with us your own stories in your life, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. We love all of you and we can't wait to see you on our next broadcast. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it first to Arnie for her messages.
Why me? I thought it was going to be
You're the
last.
first person I saw. Sorry. I guess I
Um,
could have gone to this side,
that's
but
okay. That's okay. So I think for me, it's just, I think we need to be aware of what we say and how we say it, because sometimes we may not think it's anything offensive, but then people may take it the wrong way. So me, like sometimes I try to start off with, no offense, but, in hopes that they would understand that what I'm trying to say is not that. But like you said, if you can't say anything nice, then don't say anything at all and just leave it at that. And that way, everybody's happy. So that's my thing.
you have any greetings to anybody out there?
No, not really.
Any plugs?
Yes. Tune into INCradio South
Yeah, there
Central
you go.
Space Saturday, 9 a.m. Central Time. I don't know what time that is Philippine time, but it's like 7 o'clock Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern time.
too many time zones to remember. Don't ask me. I don't
Sorry,
know.
Nate, I stole that from you. You're gonna have to do something else.
I know I was going to plug that. I was going to plug listening to INCRadio South Central States, which happens to come on every Saturday tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Time. So, check us out. There's nothing in here.
You want it.
But
Do
you
you have
can
any
win one.
messages ready?
You can win
Yeah.
one if you listen in. You can win one.
Oh, man.
Just shout out my friends here in Fort Worth, my wife and son. Hopefully they get to see this. I guess they're gonna find out about my talent show bomb. But yeah, glad to be here.
Tony?
I don't know what messages I have. I don't even know if I made sense half the time when when I was speaking.
You can
Um,
plug something.
just go out there and speak with intention. I guess that's what I'll say. Speak with intention. Speak with salt in a way that's will be valuable to somebody whenever you're speaking. Doesn't always have to be super deep, right? If you're talking about ice cream, you don't have to you don't have to talk about how deep the ice cream is, but you know always be mindful of our intentions. I just want to plug all of the shows on INCradio, and of course, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss all of the stuff that we have going on. There's too many that I want to plug, and I'll feel bad if I miss any of the any of the shows. So that's it for me, Melvie.
Okay, before I go back and say my own words, because I have, I think, a minute or so left. I would like to also thank each one of you for joining me. I know that this is my first time to host, and I appreciate all of your patience, all of your input, and of course, to all of our listeners and viewers out there. And also remember, we're here every Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And this is Chatline. If it's your first time, don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to hit that like button as well. And go ahead and post your comments. And if you're watching replay, or if you missed the whole show, go ahead and I encourage you to watch the replay because my group is so much fun today. They made me laugh out loud like no other. My cheeks hurt from smiling. And I'm so glad to be here with all of you as well, where we always have conversation that matters. And we hope that you've learned something important today. And remember to always choose the right thing to do because attitude, in the end, is a choice. So always choose the right one. We hope you enjoyed our broadcast this morning. Have a great weekend. Till next time, we love you all, and we'll see you again next week, only here on Chatline. This is Melvie signing off. Bye bye.